Welcome back to another episode of the And She Said podcast. I'm Rachel, and today we are going to discuss the timing of your life and certain pressures and expectations that come along with your life timeline. If that kind of makes sense, I guess I could explain that a little bit better. So what I mean by this is your life timeline, like how you are structuring the events that happen in your life. For example, your career, when you start your career, how's your career going? You're getting married, having kids, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today because I have a lot of feelings towards this topic. So I want to kind of get those out there. Oh, that looks better when you make it darker. Okay, I like that better. This has come up recently for me due to my engagement. If you watched a couple episodes ago, I did get engaged, which is a very exciting time in your life. With that comes a lot of questions about what's next. Also, I feel like just my age in general, I am 23, and there is a lot of kind of bigger events happening in my life that are causing questions from myself and from other people. A little background is that, like I said, I'm 23. My fiance is 29. We get asked constantly, like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? Are you buying a house? Those kind of questions. And I know you know what I'm talking about. I feel like as you reach a certain age, these are just common questions that you get asked all the time from people in your life, because I know it's just because they're genuinely curious, but these kind of questions can affect people differently. Everyone has a different idea of what their timeline in life looks like. The problem is when other people want to constantly ask questions about what you're planning. You graduate college and everyone asks you about your job. I think nobody's timeline is exactly the same, for good reason, because we as humans are not exactly the same. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of like my own timeline. I'm not going to get into detail because I get those questions enough. I don't need them from people on the internet. So I do have my own goals set for myself and my life and how I want it to play out. It's probably not like your traditional timeline, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we are kind of moving away from that traditional timeline or way that life goes. So I basically just switched careers. I did get engaged, which is very nice. I don't have kids or really any plans on having any anytime soon. And I don't own a house. We are actually renting. So, I mean, that's just like literally everybody's in a different point or spot in their life. And I think that it doesn't have to be a thing that we compare between each other. Like, we can be on different paths and it's not a competition. So I want to talk about society's pressures and family expectations, which I kind of briefly touched on, but we're going to get a little bit more into it. I think that society has expectations for pretty much everything. Society is full of expectations for basically everything in life, in my opinion. Society's always going to make you feel worse off than you are, I think. That's probably a universal experience. Some of these common societal expectations we receive, like I said earlier, are about having kids, getting married, living situation, how much money do you make? All of these things kind of put pressure on us to think we need to be doing better than we are. I feel like these expectations can also make you feel like you're behind in life or that you're not doing enough. And I don't think that is 100% true all the time. And a lot of these also come from our families. I think our family members see what paths they chose to take in life and think that we should be on a similar projection as them. And I understand why they do that, but the way your mother lived her life 20 years ago when she was the same age as you should not be the exact same way that you have chosen to do your life. You're in completely different times in life and everything is different. So why should you be on the same timeline? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I think you get what I'm saying. You have to kind of learn how to balance your family's expectations with your own expectations you have for yourself. And understand whose are more important. And newsflash, it's yours. You need to just remain focused on yourself and your goal. For me, my fiance and I have our own kind of plan set for how the rest of our lives are going to run. Obviously, it's kind of hard to decide how your life's going to plan out when you're 23, but we have a certain timeline for when we want things to happen. And I think that it's important to maintain our own expectations regardless of everybody else's and more or less ignore what they're saying. The next thing I want to talk about is comparison, which I think is a very similar idea to kind of what we just talked about. Comparison is a huge contributing factor to any reason you might be feeling bad about yourself, if I'm going to be completely honest. And it also relates to feeling pressure towards your life timeline. Naturally, we are going to compare ourselves to others. It's something humans have been doing for God knows how long. I think society kind of puts this on us to always be comparing ourselves to other people. If we look at other people in our lives, we're bound to feel different because we're not all living a universal experience. We aren't all living the same exact life. And that's kind of the beauty of it, I think. We aren't meant to all be on the same path. That's not how we were made. So an example of this in my own personal life is that like some of my fiance and I's friends have kids already, or they've been married for quite a while, and this kind of makes us sometimes feel like we should be doing the same thing. Like maybe we should have kids already, or that we're behind because we don't already have kids already. And then we kind of have to sit with ourselves and be like, well, that's really okay. You know, we don't need to be rushing this experience. We are kind of just enjoying our own company and where we are in life and trying to really enjoy each other and what we have before we add more to it. You know what I mean? Another huge source of comparison is social media. Social media is literally toxic to anything you want to do in life. If I go on social media right now, especially Facebook, I will see a bunch of girls that I went to high school with or went to college with, and a lot of them are already making big steps in their life, like having kids and getting married, buying homes. And then I'm just over here like making videos on the internet and not doing any of those other things, you know? It kind of gets you thinking that you're doing something wrong. Social media, at the end of the day, is a highlight reel. These people's lives that you're seeing on there might look all glamorous and make you feel like you're behind in life, but you don't actually know what their life is like off the screen. It could be something not worth desiring. That's all I'm going to say. Please don't be a victim of the awfulness of social media. Just get off of it once in a while, you know? Be with real people. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about kind of gets me a little bit fired up, and we're going to talk about career pressures. This is huge for me because I cannot for the life of me understand why when you're 18 graduating high school that you have to immediately know what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I think that's honestly awful. Like I don't think it's fair. There's a lot of pressure on us to kind of figure out what we're going to do for the rest of our lives when we're that young. And if college is your plan, you have to kind of know what you're majoring in, and your major is most likely going to be what you end up doing for the rest of your life until retirement. I truly believe at 18 we can't really know what our career path is for the rest of our lives. I think that it's hard to know what you want a career in, or even if the career you're picking, you don't really know anything about it. I like being an engineer, so I'm not going to say anything like that, but I chose to be an engineer without really understanding what it meant fully to be an engineer. And because I feel like engineer is such a broad term, there's so many different things you could do with that degree that rarely is any two jobs the same. And I've learned this because I've had 2 engineering jobs already, and they are both completely different. So I think it's kind of hard for young people to make this choice when they're 18. Yes, some people do switch their careers later in life or their major in college, but automatically that's going to make you feel like you're behind because you kind of have to make up for lost time. It almost feels like you're starting over. Like when I was in college, I almost changed my major probably 3 times, but each time it would have set me back and made me have to go to school longer. And I just didn't want to do that. So I kind of just like stuck it out. I really can't tell you what the solution for this is. I think that's just how this system was made, and the system's not going to change. I can't believe I got all this stuff done before Ryan came home. I had a video I wanted to film today and a podcast episode. I actually wanted to do more than one podcast episode, but I only have one outline, so we're only filming one. But I mean, that's pretty good progress, right? I mean, I'm doing the dang thing. My next topic on this is redefining success. So I think a major way to combat all of these stresses and pressures that are put on us in life is to really define what success means to you. What does success in your life look like to you, not everybody else? Nobody else matters, okay? It's all up to you. You might feel less stressed and pressured if you kind of have an idea in your mind of how everything's going to play out and not have to question yourself every time somebody questions you. I want to briefly cover some ways I think you could overcome these kind of stresses in your life, and hopefully these will be valuable to somebody watching this video. So the first one I want to talk about is self-reflection. I think reflecting on yourself without outside forces weighing in is a good way to combat everybody's opinions on you. Check in with yourself and your timeline and see how you're doing. You need to identify your own goals and personal values in life. That way you can succeed on your own or fail on your own. I mean, I guess that those are the only two options here, right? Another thing that goes along with this is to focus on personal growth. I think as you grow personally, you are less likely to allow outside forces to dictate your emotions or how you feel about certain situations. Number 2 is to set realistic goals. This kind of connects to my last point. If you have set realistic goals for yourself on what you want to achieve and when you do your self-reflection and check in on yourself, you can really see if you're succeeding or not based on if you're checking off these realistic goals you have set. And the only way to achieve goals, I think, is to make sure that they're realistic. If you set realistic goals and stick to them, you'll be able to focus on achieving them instead of feeling like you're behind. It feels good to check things off, right? So if we set goals that we can actually achieve, you can check them off and feel better about it. Like things are actually moving and progressing, and you're moving and progressing. That way you won't think like that you're behind in life. Also, last point about goals, celebrate them. When you hit goals that you've set, celebrate. I think celebration is a huge part of life. Honestly, I think any good moment that happens in your life needs to be celebrated. That's it. Simple as that. This last one I'm going to talk about might be the most important point, and I think that it was also the biggest point for myself. You have to be flexible in your planning. And I say this in literally every aspect of life. You need to be flexible when planning your life and when planning like even daily activities. You may have to change the plan, and it's important that when you have to change the plan that you don't get overwhelmed or feel more stressed because you've had to make changes. If you get stressed immediately because something had to change, it's going to weigh on you heavier than if you just kind of are flexible and you can change the plan without letting it affect you too much. Unfortunately, change is inevitable, and I've said that multiple times already, I think, on this podcast, but you literally can't avoid it. You literally can't avoid it. No matter how much you try, change will just sneak up on you, and it's happened to me many times. Many, many times. If you expect it and pivot well, it'll feel less daunting to you. This is something I always have to tell myself because I literally despise change. I wish that every single day in my life could be exactly the same. And when I set plans, I want them to follow through exactly how I planned it. And that rarely ever happens. So that's something I've had to learn, is kind of how to not expect change, but be open to it. Don't close yourself off from change because it will happen one way or another. Okay. It's more realistic to expect it, but okay. That was a lot of information. I've done a lot of talking, and I hope that made sense. I hope any of that made sense. I have a hard time with the informational, educational content. I hope you guys got some good value out of that. If you're young and in your 20s like me and worried about the timeline of your life, I hope this episode kind of put you at ease over the whole situation and made you realize that honestly, it's okay to be stressed out about it. It is your life, but kind of giving you ways to reduce the stress or focus more on yourself and less on everybody else's opinions. I think there's no such thing as being behind. I think we're all at our own pace, and there's some kind of beauty in that. That's how we were supposed to be. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.